Space is
Like, come
vacant
on, they had
gay.
riding animals. Riding animals and spaceships don't mix.
Okay, the reason we were on this subject and the reason we got to He-Man is because of a juxtaposition between old and busted Newtonian gravity and the new hotness that is Einsteinian fourth dimensional space-time. And saying, well, when you supersede one and replace it with the other, even if people aren't aware that you're taking something from the physical and putting it into the non-physical mathematical abstract to get around the fact that you don't have a phenomena, if you ignore the fact that most people won't be aware of that, there's just this idea left that one has replaced or superseded the other, therefore must be better. Well, dragons were superseded by unicorns in terms of their useful nature in fairy tales. Okay, so one superseding the other and having more unicorns prevalent in kids' stories than dragons in older stories doesn't make either of them real. Likewise, mass attracting mass and Newtonian mechanics and Einstein's bending for space-time, neither are real. The one superseding the other, who cares? Right, Arwin?
Yes, but I'm getting semantic. I just say that while superseding is almost deceptive. It's more like a succession in the storytelling tradition. Who's the story taking over right now? Because like superseding would almost imply that it's actually better, like more real, more proven, and it isn't. It's quite the contrary.
Okay.
If when I drop, sorry, Nathan.
Oh, well, I could say, obviously, if anyone's familiar with He-Man, you've got various aspects of travel being utilised with the Sword of Eternia, and they can literally teleport themselves around. Its magic is so strong. Well, in more recent She-Ra episodes, they literally use a spaceship and travel around in a heliocentric system. So technically speaking, an Etherean, I think that's the right term, spaceship from the first one. Eternian, there you go. An Eternian spaceship superseded the magic of the sword's teleportation ability. Okay, so it's technically a worse method. Takes a lot longer and breaks down a lot. And isn't instantaneous. But ultimately speaking, neither are real. So does it matter that the new hotness of intergalactic bullshit travel through sky vacuums and planets and galaxies, all nonsense, fairy tales, is better to be done by way of teleportation with a sword or done by way of clunky old spaceship? Well,
I totally agree. I don't know why they would abandon that other than just to spur interest for it, because look, now we have to sit in some kind of a object that's going through a vacuum. The hazards are incredible. You could get lost, you could get destroyed. Who's gonna rescue you when you're downed in a vacuum, Like when you still had the sword, you could just teleport straight from safe location to safe location. And other than like the occupational hazard of the people living there, you don't have any danger. So it seems kind of pointless to abandon the sword teleportation system and trade it off for a much more hazardous space travel system.
Right. What are you going to do? Anyway, that series, She-Ra, was absolutely epic for the first 2/3 of it. I think it's DreamWorks that made it. It was superb. And then about halfway to 2/3 of the way in, it descended into homosexual and lesbian connotations throughout 50% to 100% of the entire show. As the show progressed, it got more and more overt to the point where literally you've got two women princess characters married, two dads for the main and pretty much only male character in the good guy side of the argument, if you want.
Wow.
And the main character falling in love with the evil bad guy that had fallen out with her as a child when they were playing together, and they were in love towards the end, both female characters. So it descended in towards the end, and I was just like, around the point my daughter lost interest. So about 2/3 of the way, halfway in, my daughter lost complete interest, and I was like, well, I want to still see the series out. That's a lot of S's. And like I say, descended into LGBTQ and woke nonsense for the rest of the duration, and space. as I just mentioned. So about 2/3 of the way in, they found a spaceship, and then the rest of the entire series was set in space. And they substituted the bad guy, for his clone, almost identical brother with the same voice and almost the same character, but in space. Substitute one character for the other.
So they all went to space, and then they turned gay. That makes sense to me.
It was very much the hints at that were there throughout the whole series. So I don't want to make it sound like it suddenly went gay, but it got far more overt at about the halfway mark when they introduced the guy with the heart on his chest is called Bo, because he's got a bow and arrow, and then they introduce his two dads at the library that they run, and they're both kind of namby-pamby gays. You know, they're not like strong butch. You know, they're. Then again, that's probably just as bad for the gay side of it.
It's called sissies.
Yes, if you want, whatever. They weren't like fighters like the female characters. Now that's fine in terms of if you flip the script to He-Man. I can't believe we're talking about this, but I love it. Why not? Well, it was the reverse, right? There was very few female strong characters, and you could have the exact same objections put across from women, which is probably the entire purpose of this, right? It blatantly mirrors the male-led cartoons of the 80s. It mirrors them, but it takes it a step too far at about the 2/3 way mark of the series, and it, you know, you never saw He-Man snogging Man-at-Arms. You know, that didn't happen. There we go.
There was fanfics did that happen in the original.
There was a strong female in He-Man. He had his female counterpart, and she had a big sword.
Teela.
Yeah, Teela.
She-Ra.
Teela.
Yeah,
She-Ra.
And then you had the sorceress. Oh yeah. I came back and talk about He-Man. This is cool.
It was pretty cool. Right. Well, it's the old cartoon. It's like, yeah, it could have been gay, but it didn't really act like that. It kind of left it open, but apparently with the new series, like they totally rolled it in there. Ugh.
Yeah, that's just modern TV. I mean, it partially affirmed why I'd got rid of TV in the first place, because you hold out hope, and then a friend of my wife's has got a Netflix account, and if anybody's got Netflix, they're probably well aware of this. You've got multiple accounts that you can stand out to your mates and family and stuff. So essentially, we've been offered free Netflix. Well, okay, fine, yeah, great. Stick it on every so often when he's paid his bill, and we'll watch a couple of things on it. And one of them was She-Ra. And you're like, okay, started great, hooks you right in. Before you know it, lesbians in space.
Make perfect sense to me. When you go to space, you become gay, so that makes sense.
That's not what I'm suggesting.
It's
Please don't demonetize me.
Space is the imagination. It's where anything can happen, right? It's the imagination of those who talk about it. So yeah, why not?
Out of curiosity, which do you have a bigger problem with, the lesbians or the space?
I don't particularly have a problem with either, except for when it's aimed at my 5-year-old daughter.
Fair enough.
Right. And
like I always
the
say,
spaceships have nothing to do with it, you know? Like, it's a planet or a realm-bound series. It always was. You go on the realm with natural scenarios and beautiful landscape, the kind of fantasy style. And maybe somebody has some like techno gun installed in their arm or whatever, but never too much beyond that. It was never about spaceships, right? Never really. Like, come on, they had riding animals. Riding animals and spaceships don't mix.
Okay, the reason we were on this subject and the reason we got to He-Man is because of a juxtaposition between old and busted Newtonian gravity and the new hotness that is Einsteinian fourth-dimensional space-time. And saying, well, when you supersede one and replace it with the other, even if people aren't aware that you're taking something from the physical and putting it into the non-physical mathematical abstract to get around the fact that you don't have a phenomena, if you ignore the fact that most people won't be aware of that, there's just this idea left that one has replaced or superseded the other, therefore must be better. So, okay, is the travel type better when you've got a spaceship versus teleportation from a sword? I only use that as a vague example. I can't even remember if He-Man actually did teleport with the sword. Probably. At some point, the sword did everything.
It could have been a teleportation pad or anything, you know? Magical things did happen like that, so... Or
Indeed.
Orko did it or something with some special spell, you know.